I'm glad that here on the Garage Grit podcast, we're going to be talking to Rob Davis, who represents CardConnect and Fiserv. We're in that credit card processing space. As you know, in episode 37, we talked about credit card processing, more specifically, whether or not to pass along the fees and how to pass along those fees, or how people are passing along those fees, and whether or not to do it with that panel of shop owners. They shared their experiences. They shared what's working for them and their thoughts on the subject at large, and how they are or aren't doing it. And that's a worthwhile conversation to go check out. Go check it out. Go listen in. And I bet you can relate to one, if not all, of the three shop owners at some point in time. And so it got me thinking. And just this morning, I had an email asking me about how much I'm paying. What are my rates? How much am I paying to take credit cards, right? And so you probably get hit up with that all the time. That's probably the lead conversation with the sales calls that you get. What are your rates? What are your rates? And that's actually, I think that's a reasonable conversation to have. That's what the dual pricing is all about, right? Is a possibility of managing your expense in this area, not paying for someone else's reward card. But I think also, as important, maybe more important, is that if you are doing something like this, that you are doing it correctly. There are different laws in place. There are different requirements. And so, I think it's worthwhile to have somebody who isn't just going to get you the lowest rate, but also somebody that's going to be helping you guide through the process. And that's why I'm bringing on Rob to have this conversation about credit card processing for auto repair shops. Rob, thank you for being here. And guys, just so you know, I've known Rob for a few decades, and so he's not just some random fish that I found out there. He's somebody who's a credible representative in this space, and he's got a team behind him as well. Rob, thank you for coming to the show. But today's episode is talking about the actual details of the dual processes. What we're going to do is we're going to listen to some clips to some of the things that were said, again, about their perspectives, their perceptions, their experiences. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the legalese. We're going to talk about the actual rules. We're going to talk about best practices. And hopefully that will, if the last episode created any kind of questions in your head, and you're trying to figure out what's next for your shop, this is a good spot to listen to if you're talking about dual pay or cash discounting. And I recently learned, today, in fact, that those aren't the same. In my mind, they're the same, but they're a little bit different. Is that the case? It turns out there's a difference between surcharging, cash discount, and dual pay.
Dual pricing.
Dual pricing.
Yep.
I want the definition of surcharging. Go.
So surcharging is a flat set fee of 3% is the max that you're allowed to pass on of credit card fees, but you can only do it with credit card fees. You can't do it with, Visa or MasterCard debit. It can only be done on there. Unless your software is doing it right, 9 times out of 10, we don't even know because
my software. You're talking about a credit card terminal, not your shop management software.
Correct. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying that. That will determine it for you. However, most people, like, the lay person is just going to see it's got a Visa or MasterCard logo on it. They think it's a credit card. Well, it can be used also as a credit card, but you're not allowed to put the surcharge fee on there.
Now, surcharging is allowed in all 50 states?
It is allowed, but it's becoming non-compliant. It's becoming the old way that things used to be. And we're moving into something that is actually not new, but we're fine-tuned the verbiage on, and that's dual pricing. And what dual pricing is, you've actually seen it for about 28 years now in the US for gas prices. One price for cash, one price for credit. And that's how it's been for about 28 years. So we've now brought it to more of the mainstream, the retail side in the last 9 years.
And in both cases, the concept is, why should the merchant pay for the rewards points that the customer is getting?
Agreed.
And I can empathize with that. I mean, my goodness, that's kind of ridiculous. I'm saying empathize, and my mind goes to the recent Charlie Kirk clips about how he was talking about how, he doesn't like the word empathy. He likes the word sympathy. Have you seen that clip?
Yep.
Okay. So maybe I should say sympathy. I don't know, but I can actually I relate to, right? I can experience And that was always my perception of what empathy meant, was that if you actually had a personal experience with it. Yeah, when we take credit cards, right, and we actually experience that, paying for those rewards, and it's kind of the cost of doing business. And you'll hear, or at least that's been the perception. And you'll hear, if you heard episode 37, you've heard those shop owners say similar things. All right. Here's the thing. How do I pick surcharge versus dual pay?
So a lot of the way we do it is we like to analyze how they're doing it. If they're doing it the normal way, which we'd call interchange plus, there's several different ways to price people, most of which are being phased out, but interchange plus is one, flat rate is another. But what we do is we'll take their current services, what they're doing, do an analysis, put it into a software, and we can also do the calculations by hand. But look at what they're doing, look at what they're spending, and assess the right program for them. Obviously, we're seeing.
But what's the difference? Why would there be a difference in dual pay versus surcharging? I'm still collecting my 3%. How can you actually analyze it and say this is better for you?
So surcharging can only be done on credit cards. It can't be done on credit cards and debit cards. When you have a
fair, because there's no rewards points on debit cards.
Correct. But that's some of the misinformation there. People don't know that there's a difference. The other big thing about when you see smaller places that do tire repair, like plugging tires or oil changes, so $50 and under, that's the average one of us is going to be using a Visa or MasterCard debit. So you can't pass on that 3%. And the 3% is a very fixed set number in the banking world. Now, the other big problem with that is again, the legislation's constantly changing. So having someone like me who can look at that for you can make sure you're always within compliance, as they call it. But a lot of that is leaning on people who know that industry.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Okay. I feel like I don't have any exact documentation, but I feel like I've gone to a gas station, used a debit card, and still got hit with a 3% fee.
Yeah, and if you did, then that shouldn't have been, because that's actually non-compliant, and that's a $2,500 fine if they did that. So, and yeah, that's some of the confusion of what people not knowing of how and where it falls into play, like which is the right format. And that's what we usually do, is we try to fit what's best for them. I mean, I know a lot of shop owners that work with what you do, doing auto repair, larger dollar tickets, when you're talking $650, $1,200, things like that. That's not necessarily something that they want to feel comfortable with passing on the fees to the customer. So that's why we assess it. Is it better to just do standard interchange pricing, or passing on, doing dual pricing where you're passing on the fees? Now, where compliance lies into play with that whole surcharging thing is, because it maxes out at 3%, any service centers that do like fleet service, fleet cards are things like, as you talked about, rewards. Visa rewards card, the highest corporate card out there, is 3.12%. So you may be passing on the 3%, but you're being charged 3.12. So you're still in the hole on that one. So you're trying to break even, but you're not. And again, it's always to make sure you're within compliance too. And that's why we do the analysis, to find out, are we doing what's in the best interest of the business and the best interest of their clients?
Okay. I'm a little concerned that I don't know that I could yet articulate the difference between dual pay, dual pricing, and surcharge.
And surcharging?
Because it sounds like dual pricing allows me to hit them with a fee for a debit card. That doesn't sound like that's the difference.
It also, because you can change the percentage, as I said, using that example of the Visa corporate rewards card at 3.12%, you can do 3.5%. And
if I look at my current statement, and it says that I'm getting on average a 2.2 rate, then I could just pass on 2.2% as opposed to 3% with dual pricing.
Yes, that's an average. The number 2.2 is an average effective rate, as we would call it, but it's not actually covering all cards, because you do have higher cards, as you had said, with rewards that are above that.
Is there any
So
legislation in place allowing me to, in real time, flex that rate based on the actual card being used? I mean, a corporate rewards card is different from a brand new card holder who's probably only getting a 1% cashback rate for a person on a person.
at this current moment, no, because it's really after the fact of when all the rewards report back.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're trying to be fair, like that's actually the most fair, right? Because otherwise, if you do a 3% or a 4.5%, you're kind of dinging those who aren't that rate, as well as you are also making those who are using their debit cards to pay a fee that they wouldn't have to pay otherwise. Now, of course, there are other payment options, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first, I think there's a third category that we need to kind of define, and is cash discounting.
So cash discounting and dual pricing, let's break those two apart a little further too. So the difference with those is, we'll try to use it simple. You're going to do a tire plug, and let's say as simple as tire plug, it's $10, and your price board in your shop says it's $10 to repair a tire. When they come up and they ring you up, the credit card terminal is going to say one of two things for dual pricing. It's going to say $10. If it's cash, it's going to say $10, and let's say 0.5%, $10.35 if you pay with credit card. So the customer could then choose. Now, true cash discounting would be the opposite, where your pricing board would say it's $10 to plug a tire. Excuse me, it's $10.35 to plug a tire. But if you pay cash, it's 3.5% less than that. So it's the same, but yet different at the same time, because they have different rules. The way it's the operating software for the merchant services.
So surcharge, it's a flat 3%. That's what it is. It applies to everything.
That's the max.
Actually a credit card. Dual pricing allows for more flexibility, and you don't do the flexibility for each and every account. You actually just kind of, it's still standardized up front for everybody. And it also covers the debit cards if you're trying to cover a broader portion of your expenses, which in my thinking still doesn't sound fair, but we'll leave that for the side. And then cash discounting is a scenario where it starts out being this is the price, period, unless you pay with one of these 5 ways. And I said 5 ways, even though it's cash discounting, because there is more ways to pay other than just, green dollar bills or Bitcoin.
Correct.
And I'm kidding about the Bitcoin.
You're not, though, because we have terminals that we're functioning with right now that within this year will release to be allowed you to play with digital currency.
Okay.
But that's a whole other conversation.
That is a whole other conversation. But anyway, I want to pay with blueberries. I have a blueberry bush over here, and I want to pay.
Depending on the market value of that day,
the old barter system, and then putting a 3% charge on it. Back to what are the alternate ways, in addition to cash and maybe in the future digital currency?
Yep, but check. But not everyone's for that because it's also
all right. So hold on, you check. Now, most people don't walk around with a checkbook in their hand.
I haven't touched a checkbook myself, honestly, in well over 15 years.
Well, yeah. Okay. So how are you going to write a check?
You can do an ACH.
Okay. So if it's pre-configured to accept an ACH, I key in my bank routing number and my bank account number?
Yep.
Okay.
But they can set you up. So if you have
we're going to do a quick poll, and everyone who knows their routing number, please raise your right hand. And now everybody who knows their bank account number, please raise your left hand. And of course, I just raised the backwards hands there just then. But
I don't memorize them.
I just failed the test. And so, but if you're standing here like this, then you are a numbers freak. God bless you. I can appreciate that. I respect that. But
that's not me.
Don't know that. Nobody knows.
But most of our banking apps do have it available. And I can literally access mine in under 30 seconds and get with my obviously biometric security. I can get to my routing number and account number in my bank in under 30 seconds.
You're letting a mega financial institution store your...
I don't use a mega financial institution. I also don't believe in that either.
All right. not in bed together with other mega corporations, so I'm sure you're fine. So before we started to record, Rob asked if I was real or if I was just an AI version of myself, and so this goes back to that conversation.
Yep.
Listening now. But anyway, okay, so again, I'm going to push back on this. I don't think most people know that, and I don't want service writers and service advisors and customer service people teaching people how to use their banking app on their cell phone.
It's not as insecure. It's not, but it's just another way. It's not necessarily. So the way I use it is this: depending on your loyalty and your relationships with your clients, which most of these service places, they have families that have been going to get their car fixed there for decades, literally decades. I've been going to the same people for 25 plus years. And those people, if it would make it easier, especially let's use the example that, I think we had hypothetically talked about one time was, hey, I'm not going to be able to get there in time. I'm at meetings all day. I can't get there. They close at 6. I want to pick up my car, but I got to pay for it. The last thing we should ever do is be giving a credit card number over the phone. So most of my clients and people I have relationships with, we set them up on a text or email to pay link, where they can send the customer a link and it's secure, tokenized, and encrypted, where they can click on it and pay one of two ways. You can either pay with an ACH, they can enter the stuff on their own, or they can enter a credit card number on their own. And then it goes back to their system, shows it's been paid and everything, and it's cleared up. And now, hey, we can leave the keys above the divisor and you can pick it up after you're done work.
All right. So cash pay is green dollar bills, maybe in the future, near future, digital currency, ACH transaction, which is a lot of shops don't take personal checks.
Correct.
But
because it takes too long and you can't clear the money and prove the money's cleared right away. With an ACH, you can prove that it's cleared immediately.
You can. And so you can send them right there at the counter. You could text them a link so they could do it right there on their phone. Yep. If they wanted to, or even at the terminal that you provide, that's fine. Okay. But that's not the only way. There's another way. Yeah.
So what way were you referencing?
Like to get a cash discount. Is there any other way to pay?
Not that I can at this moment. No.
What about like
blood
or
blood?
Zelle,
so we do that. I apologize. Yes.
Hey,
so we do.
I don't know. What other payment apps can I use?
So that's funny you say that. So there's other things like Zelle and Plaid and Venmo. So what's neat is some of the credit card security companies we deal with, we can deal with a credit card terminal. They'll even allow them to take Plaid, Klarna, Venmo, not Venmo, Zelle, all in the machine. It's a secure device.
Okay.
And it'll be basically pushed into there. It goes right into their bank account.
Okay.
And Zelle at this point is free. It doesn't cost anything for you to, at this point, as I say, to clarify now.
And it
just like Venmo.
You may or may not have access to Zelle depending on your bank.
All banks all banks should offer it at this point. I'm not saying 100%, but I would say at least 95% of them do, because even the little banks are part of a bank network, as you will. There's a different term for it. I forget what it's called, but they even have access to the tool of that through there. So there's not a whole lot of banks I've come across yet that don't do Zelle. Zelle, as I said, Venmo used to be free from one person to another, but now if it's a person sending to a business, that now costs 1.9%. And think 30 cents a transaction to do. Zelle will probably do the same thing in the near future. Hasn't yet, but it will eventually.
And you set this up ahead of time when they're consulting with you and they're working with you. All right, what payment forms do you want to accept?
Yep.
And
correct.
You can exclude Venmo to avoid that 1.9 fee. And if you're trying to avoid these fees altogether, because you're not going to be able to pass that fee on. That's actually in the cash discounting field. And so you
if you will,
So that's kind of ironic, but that's interesting. Last week we talked with Rob Davis, representing CardConnect and Fiserv, and during some of that conversation, we talked about David. And let me just add that Rob's part of a team, right? It's not just him sitting out there all by himself. And sometimes some of those team members have different skill sets, and data is David's strength. And so this time we're going to be talking to David about some of those data points, also about the episode 37, the Garage Grid podcast, talking about dual pricing or passing along those credit card fees to your customers and whatnot. So David, thanks for being here. I appreciate you joining us today.
So my name is David Nacion. I've actually been in the industry since 2003. And prior to that, I did own my own business, and my business did accept credit cards. And so I know what it's like to be on both sides of the equation. The number one reason I got into this industry was really just to help, merchants, navigate through all the, twists and turns when it comes to credit card processing and, compliance and fees and things like that.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So I appreciate you being on both sides of that equation. And you work with Rob?
I do.
Okay. And so at the end, we're going to be chatting about who they could contact, you or Rob, or maybe the answer is both or either, for if they have additional questions beyond what they're after listening to this episode. But let's jump right in. Right? Let's actually comment and talk about this last episode. And again, this was episode 37. And I want to play a couple clips from that, and then I'll let you kind of weigh in on that. But before we go there, what do you see as one of the biggest challenges of getting merchants to realize the benefit? Like, where are they getting their information usually when they're talking about, what is right and what's not?
Our particular customers, whenever they get pushback and they give that feedback to us, it comes from the consumers, because there's a lot of misinformation in the industry about how passing on fees looks like, how it's done, how it's presented, how much can you charge, and things like that. And ultimately, when the merchant does not want to upset their client base, and they want to be able to use a program that is compliant, but also too, credit card rates are not going down. Costs are not going down, and the bottom line, the credit card fees is directly to the bottom line. So they have to take a look at, how much net profit, goes towards just paying the credit card fees every single month. And is there an alternative?
Okay. All right. And those alternatives, right? There's the traditional surcharge, which is very common for old gas stations. They've been doing that for a while, different price for cash versus credit card. And that's called the surcharge approach. There's also a dual pricing.
And that's really how the gas stations do it.
And, is that how they do it? Okay. And then there's also cash discounting. And to me, it all sounds like 3%. What are the differences between surcharging and dual pricing and cash discount?
Great question. So surcharging has been around at least, since I've been in the industry, and that's really the only program that Visa does like. And there are a couple caveats. There are, rules that a merchant has to follow in order to do a surcharge program. Number one, they're supposed to register with Visa, which 90% of merchants don't register with Visa. So already they're not compliant. Number two, the max that they can cap on the surcharge program is 3%. Number three, a merchant cannot make any money off of the surcharge programs. Like with Lou, he said that his effective rate is 2.2%. He's not supposed to charge 3% unless his current processor is charging him 3%. Then he can pass that through. It has to be passed through.
Now that's that's the rule on surcharging.
On surcharging.
Does that same rule apply to dual pricing?
No, and I'll get into that when I get into dual pricing. The other caveat for surcharging is you can't charge it on a debit card.
Right.
It's against Visa regulations.
Right. But not charging on a debit card seems fair. Like, I don't want it to be charged on debit cards. I'm not getting hit with a fee when I'm doing it with a debit card.
That's not true on the merchant side. On the merchant side, they're still paying fees for debit cards. Now,
but they're not paying as high of a fee.
Correct. And
it's
in
like
fact,
1% versus 2.9.
Correct. And the Durbin Amendment, from the FANC Act, that did help with the merchants save money on the debit card transactions, but still there is a cost to that. And for debit cards, depending on the industry that you're in, you can, have a very high, a percentage of debit cards that you're accepting, like medical, HSA, FSA cards. They do a lot of debit cards.
Okay. All right. So tell me about dual pricing.
So dual pricing, you have one price for card and one price for cash, just like the gas you've been doing for over 30 years.
Okay. And they've been allowed to do it for over 30 years, but no one else was.
I don't know if they've been allowed to do it, but they've been doing it forever. And this is why, merchants nowadays, they say, well, the gas stations are doing it. Why can't I? And so Visa is okay with doing it. And by law, by federal law, they have to allow a merchant to be able to offer a different price if they pay with another form of payment other than credit card.
A newer federal law, not an old. That's just a new change.
Came out 2010.
2010. Okay, so not that new, but new enough. Okay, so it's offering multiple forms of payment. Now, how is it different from cash discount? Isn't it? That's just a way of framing it, isn't it?
It's just a way of framing. Yes, pay with card, and this is your price. Pay with cash. I'm going to give you a 3% discount.
Okay. All right. So it is a way of framing it. The rules don't change. You're allowed to, or are there different rules for cash discounting?
No, because it's outside of the realm of surcharging.
Okay.
Surcharging is when you add a fee to a credit card transaction.
Okay.
Dual pricing, you have one price if you pay with card, you have a lower price if you pay with cash. Just like the gas.
It feels like it still feels like we're splitting hairs when it comes to the surcharge versus dual pricing, because it's still I'm adding 3% to the final bill, but I'm with the surcharge. With the dual price, I'm giving an option. That's the difference, is I get an option to avoid the surcharge. Okay.
And, a lot of it comes from Visa and their attitude towards it, because, Visa, I mean, they're still, the 800-pound gorilla in the industry. 80% of credit card transactions are Visas, and they don't want anything to make their brand look negative. And so whenever somebody wants to pay with a credit card and they add a fee, Visa's very sensitive to that. They don't like that. They want it to just be freely accepted, but meanwhile, it's the merchant that's paying for all these credit card fees.
Right. Well, right. So back to the whole game, right? And this has been readily apparent for those of us that have been paying attention for decades. Visa's out there, we'll give you this reward. We'll give you this reward, cash back, right? And, but the merchants are the ones that pay for that. That's the bottom line. That's the reality. And so, okay. Let's do this. Let's play a clip from from episode 37, and the clip we're going to play is specifically about credit card machines and adding that 3% and what the rules are in New York. And I'm going to let that play all the way into when we start talking about how different states pay different fees. Let's just listen in real quick. And here we go.
We could not, if we have to do credit card, it's got to be very specific. And I believe there's credit card processing machines in New York State it's processed through there. So that doesn't even hit us. So it would be charged on top of the client. So I wouldn't have to put that on my invoice. There's some specific rules in New York State, which I know are different. And TechMetric, our point of sale system, does not. We use Tech Merchant as well. So they do not have that type of integration. So I'm not quite sure how we would charge for that at the moment, other than, increasing the cost, in the mix somewhere.
I understand it right. The different states have different rules as far as how you are presenting that you are passing that fee along.
Yeah.
And all right, so therein lies some of the questions, right? Is let's say, okay, you have a repair shop and they say, okay, I want to start doing this. How does it actually end up integrating, and how do we manage the customer experience on top of that?
Okay, so I've been in the industry. We started presenting a cash discount dual pricing model back in 2017. But honestly, the way that we were doing it was wrong. We were technically adding a fee, and anytime you add a fee, it's considered a surcharge. Again, I talked about how there's a lot of misinformation, and it's just really just a matter of education. And, with surcharging, you'll see the base amount. Lou takes that information from his POS system, his software, and he enters into the credit card machine. The credit card machine is going to add a fee that's considered a surcharge. Now, a lot of the credit card terminals, they don't even program to say surcharge anymore. They'll say something like a non-cash adjustment.
Okay. At the
But the
I don't know,
but the
but that
software
sounds
that a lot of the new
pleasant.
software that's coming out on the market, and we specialize in that, is where he'll enter the base amount into the software, and the software will say this is the card price and this is the cash price. The cash price is 3 to 4% less than what the card price is.
All right. So what we're picturing is they're in TechMetric. They get the number of what it's going to cost. They then
As if
have
it
to
was
go
cash.
to your software platform, enter in $500 or $1,000, whatever it is, and change, and then that will give you right there in front of you the card versus cash payment options. And at that point, they'll have to speak that over the phone to whoever they're talking to. All right. Or if they actually do send a paper or email or text message invoice, they could then include that. But a lot of times it's a phone call. Do you approve us to do the next step? Right. And so, but they would need to, at that point, right up front, not say $500, but say the price with card, price without card.
Right. So it's $550 if you pay with card, but if you pay with cash, we give you $15 discount.
Okay. And is that the exact same across all 50 states, or are there different rules? As he kind of mentioned, the rules in New York, maybe they're different from Florida.
I don't know how the rules pertain to actually, auto repair, because I know it's very regulated. But when it comes to payments, that I can speak of, and with that Durbin Amendment back in 2020, it's a federal law that a merchant can offer a lower price if there's another form of payment other than card.
Okay. All right. The Durbin Amendment is what allows it for all 50 states. Now, are there any rules as far as how that is being presented?
Not really. They just have to have one price for card and one price for cash. That's where the dual pricing or the cash discount, if you pay with cash, it's going to be this much lower.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Let's go on to the next clip then. Let's go check out. I think it's Lou speaking again.
That's the same thing as taking a credit card. Looking at a lot of times the discount was more than the fee that you pay, because a lot of people charge 2%, but my average is 2.2%. So, to do the math, a lot of times people would say, I'll give you a cash discount, but it's more than what you actually pay in a credit card fee. And I don't ever want to commingle those things. Everything we put through the books, I don't want any baloney with having to track or ever have to look back with anything. But at some point, I think we will. And when you look at it, I mean, geez, $40,000 will be. Last year, we were just around the same point. That's a lot of profit.
Okay. Let's chat about that a little bit, because I think he's kind of referring to that surcharging model and how the rules say you're not allowed to profit. You're not allowed to charge more than you're actually getting charged.
Correct.
But at the same time, you're doing it on a law of averages, because each rewards card is going to generate a different percentage potentially as far as how much the cost is going to be.
Correct. So effective rate, which is what he was talking about, what the effective rate of what he's actually paying credit cards versus how much revenue he's getting off of credit cards, it's a moving target. And the reason I say it's a moving target is because there are different credit card costs. We call that interchange for all the different card types. Debit cards are going to be the least expensive. But within debit, there's two types of debit cards. There's regulated and there's non-regulated, and the non-regulated costs more. But most consumers nowadays, at least me personally, every single credit card in my wallet is going to be at least a rewards card. I may even have a world card. I may have a what's called an affinity card, which is branded to a particular, like the Las Vegas Raiders, and so those cards cost more. And then above that, you have business credit cards, you have corporate credit cards, which cost even more. So it really just depends on the clientele that comes here and what cards they're using. So earlier I said that, him negotiating a 2.2%, effective rate, it won't be 2.2% every single month. Next month, it might be 2.7,
So what is the rate that you're not allowed to charge more than you're getting, more than you're being charged?
Correct.
Is that's an effective rate over a period of what time frame?
It's not a period of time frame. It's whatever the credit card processor is charging you. So
But
in the
each
dual
transaction is
pricing,
different.
not necessarily. Generally, in this program, the processor will charge the merchant a flat rate. They'll just charge the
see.
merchant a flat rate that corresponds to the rate that they're going to pass on to their customers. So it's always the same.
Got it.
So
Okay.
the difference is going to be how much profit that processor is going to
Yeah.
make
So
on
if
the
you're,
account.
and we're about to geek out here, but if you're using a different model, an interchange model, then that's when your per transaction actually fluctuates.
Correct.
And if you're on that interchange model, then you can't do dual pricing because it's fluctuating every single time.
You're not supposed to make
Okay.
a profit on the account, or you could even be taking a loss on the account. I mean, we have a lot of clients that their effective rate is well over 3%, sometimes over 4%, and they might only be charging 3%.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Even still, though, I mean, if it's back to the cost of doing business, right? And if they're not passing anything along, they're eating all of it. So, all right, let's go to how that fee is going to be presented, and I think some of the hang up that most repair shop owners have is that they're thinking kind of like they kind of think about it as they want to be treated, which isn't necessarily a bad approach. But I mean, at the very least, you can understand the perspective.
Yep.
Why don't we listen to this clip right here?
He said, "Hey, it's $500, but I'll give it to you for $450 if you pay me cash." And listen, I love the cash side of things. If I'm doing a big job at the house, maybe that works. But I just feel like when I'm talking to a customer about their car being repaired, that I want to make it as seamless as possible, as smooth as possible, and just give them their car back right, fixed, as quick as possible, so that they understand what would happen. And then they're not thinking about, well, the price is going to be less if I give the guy cash. Almost feels slimy in a way.
What do you think? How do you respond to that?
I feel for Kevin, and I feel the same way, or at least I used to. I would, go to a shop. I mean, I just had one of my vehicles tinted. It was $700. Now they want to add a 3%, surcharge on top of that. How else can I pay? Do you guys take checks? Because I really don't want to, pay that extra, $21, in order for me to use my credit card. Like me personally, like my Wells Fargo credit card, I get 2% cash back, but now they're going to charge me 3%, so it's really going to cost me 1%. But on Kevin's point, I mean, it's not really fair to the merchant what type of card, I'm going to use there. I could use a debit card, and it's going to cost the merchant less, but more than likely for a purchase that size, I want the points, or I want the miles.
Right. But not at your own expense. And I get that. But it's also a scenario where the merchant doesn't want to pay for it either. But this, I recognize this is a growing thing, that more and more businesses and shops are making this change.
Mhm.
Let's go to this quick bit from that episode
Yep.
and see what your thoughts are on this.
It's just one of those things. Maybe it's not a problem. People are so used to it. Or people are getting very used to it. I mean, you pay a fee pretty much everywhere else you go. Doctors, restaurants, you name it.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Let's talk about. Is it really kind of spreading that much?
It is. Again, we started selling this program back in 2018. Where it really started picking up traction was during the pandemic. During the pandemic, businesses were doing anything they could to offset their costs. And I still remember during the pandemic, businesses would not take cash. You could only pay contactless, and that affects the businesses that were, very cash, heavy, like fast food.
But again, we're talking, where it's being mostly adopted. I would imagine that fast food, which is supposed to be a smaller ticket item than it used to be, it's not so much anymore, right? But we're talking about smaller tickets. It's more, especially like in restaurants. You buy a pizza, you buy fast food, you pay your copay depending on the insurance that you have. these are all smaller transactions than what you usually have at a full blown auto repair shop.
Right.
And
And
so,
during the pandemic, because they were not accepting cash because, COVID apparently can be transmitted from paper, they were only doing contactless.
right, that was one of the myths that was going around in 2020. Even now that that's past us, and maybe that's part of what drove us to having less cash in our pocket. But that's the reality, right? We don't really have cash.
Especially for this type of a business, it's usually a pop-up problem. So if they're budgeting for their oil changes, maybe, but all of a sudden their car breaks down, they need to get it fixed today, but they don't have time to go to the bank. The car's dead, so it might pose a problem. I try not to give them too much of a headache when they're thinking about their car repair. Basically, they walk in their door, and I train my technicians and my service advisors to basically take their problem and make it their own and go fix it that day. Get that car fixed quickly, over communicate with them, let them know what's going on, and make that process smooth. So last thing I want to do is hit them with, I'm already giving you a price. Now I'm going to give you a choice on how you want to pay for it.
Okay. Kevin has doubts. What do you want to say to Kevin and other people who are in his camp?
Being able to offer, there's another clip where, we talked about choices, being able to offer them a choice on how they want to pay. Right. And, he brings up a good point. Generally when somebody brings a vehicle in for repair, it's not usually just for an oil change because something's wrong. In fact, when I brought my Escalade in for service, my AC went out. And in Las Vegas, when your AC goes out, you're going to pay attention to it really quickly. And it was a belt, and my repair ended up being $1,500 to fix my AC. But being able to choose how I want to pay. Do I want to pay with my credit card and get points, or do I want to pay with cash and save 4%? I'm gonna really think about how I want to pay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. And it's if it's something that you can plan for or you have the access to it, then, maybe it's an option. But there are other options other than actual cash, right? You could talk about Zelle. You could talk about paying by check. And Rob talks about this quite a bit, but most repair shops, they don't want to actually take a paper check. And that's not what, when you pay by check in 2025, that doesn't necessarily mean that you actually have to get out a checkbook and sign your name, right? You could pay by ACH. You want to talk about that a little bit, what those options look like?
Yeah, so one of the things that our software can do is we can also set up the merchant to be able to actually accept ACH. Now, for the merchants that don't want to, pay for the additional, charge for ACH, which is not very much, is nowhere near what it costs for even a debit card. Most of the regional bank, or the national banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, they offer Zelle, and the way that our merchants work around it is they log into the mobile banking, they take a screenshot of the Zelle QR code, print it out, put it at the register, and that's an alternate, to cash or check.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed it, but I'm a little bit of a numbers geek. I memorize numbers, but most people don't have their banking information memorized.
Right. But with Zelle, if they scan the QR code, it'll go into whatever mobile banking that they use, and they can pay
I don't have
directly
Zelle.
from the checking out.
I'm going to push back. I don't have Zelle.
Everybody has Zelle. If you have a major bank, you have Zelle. You may not have set it up yet, but all it takes is just a phone number or an email address to get it set up.
Okay. All right.
Now you have a link to your checking account.
Okay. And I have to have the Zelle app on my phone to make that happen.
Just any mobile banking app.
Okay. It's bundled in with whatever banking app I'm using. Okay. Interesting. So, if I was a shop owner, my concern would be having to educate my customers on something like that.
Right. So they could put up a sign that says pay with cash and save 4%. We also accept Zelle. Here's our QR code.
Okay. All right. And the QR code would do all the heavy lifting for them. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I pay a lot of
Um,
my vendors. I get a lot of work done at my home, and a lot of times my vendors want to charge me 3% to pay with a credit card. I just had my AC ducts cleaned. It was $450. Pay with a card. It's 3%. Well, do you guys take Zelle? Yeah, we take Zelle. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. Pay me that way.
And so, when I feel like it's kind of important to point that out when you're talking about cash versus card.
Well, and Brad, you
and
brought a
offering
good
those two
point
for payment.
about ease of payment, right? I mean, somebody might not know the routing number, account number. They might not know how to use their banking app to pay. But our software, the merchant right at the counter, they can send via text or email a payment link to their customers. And I know we're going to talk about demographics. Gen Zs and millennials, they're used to paying via their phone. I'm a Gen Xer, and I got with the times.
Well, welcome to the Gen X Club. I'm with you there. I haven't necessarily. So I don't have Venmo on my phone, and I have not actually ever Zelled anybody. But let's hear what the panelists had to say about age. Mitchell, I need you to jump in here because you're a little bit younger than us, and so your response is going to be potentially a little bit different. I want to hear from from your age group. But what I'm really hearing, Kevin, is that you're not upset about the fee. You're upset about the oops, there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not upset about the $16 burger. Actually, you should be upset about the $16 burger. Like, where are you getting your burgers then?
They're expensive.
So anyway, they must be good. But so in all seriousness, though, I mean, it's more about the surprise, there it is at the end, right? So, that's kind of the frustration for us. Mitchell, what are your thoughts on that? How do you care? Why?
It's kind of interesting. I've noticed a big difference between like age of customers. Like we have a older clientele of customers, and a lot of times they're the clientele who are paying cash. And then we'll have, younger people like myself who come in and they really don't care. They just want their car fixed and they want to be back on the road. And they're not opposed to the fees. It doesn't seem to affect them. From what I've seen.
Okay. All right. And so, one of the things I've kind of played with is, I can tell you from a repair shop, if I'm talking to a repair shop and if they can tell me their average age of their customer, or they can tell me their average repair order, I can tell them the likelihood of whether or not they pass credit card fees. So one of the things that we learned from this panel was that Mitchell also had the lowest ARO. And we also learned that his customer base was a little bit younger. Kevin and Lou didn't seem to have a good handle on their average age of customer. They thought it was pretty well evenly spread. But that would be my impression, is that the older, the boomers and the Xers are going to be more likely to push back. And so, what do you say to a shop that says most of my customers are over 60?
Again, it depends on how they're presenting it. Like I said, with dual
All comes down to
pricing
the
with gas
presentation.
stations, it's been out for 30 years. I
Yeah.
mean, it was when I was in high school, we had two prices.
Yep.
So it just depends on how it's presented. If I'm going to add a fee to a credit card transaction, as a Gen X or even a boomer, they may have a problem with it. Whereas the younger generation, a lot of times they're used to just paying all these extra fees. It's becoming the new normal.
Right. That's interesting. You actually said that was going to be in one of the clips that we were about to play for you. Let's see if I can hop over to that moment and just play it.
Of course, before COVID, I don't think anybody charged for credit card fees, not that I knew of. But once COVID, happened, it seemed like everybody was using their credit cards. It was all contactless payment, no cash, couldn't touch any of that. Credit cards became the norm. I know prior to COVID, I wouldn't put many things on credit cards. If I was out and it was a $50 bill, I'm paying $50 in cash, or small items on my credit card. I only wanted my credit card for the larger purchases. After COVID, or dog night at the ball game. You can't buy a dog with a dollar bill. You got to buy it with a credit card. So you go down and you're buying, $4 in hot dogs. I would never do that before, but it's become the norm. And I think the fees now are starting to become, so after COVID, all those fees that were there prior are still there. So people just got accustomed to them. So I think this is new. This credit card fees after the fact. We never spoke about that 10 years ago. It was just our cost, and it was the cost of doing business. Today, it's, well, if I can pass it on to the customer, I will. Some do, some don't. Like I agree with Lou. I don't want to be first to the game. I'll wait if we have to do it until everybody's doing it, and then I'll feel better about it. But
And I think that was, so I kind of flipped around. I think Kevin actually was referencing this moment when he was saying, I agree with Lou in the previous clip. But we're talking again, it's not just the hot dogs, right? I mean, the collision centers, the dealerships, they're certain to adopt it. And so do we have any, you have some anecdotal data in and around Philly about how there's a lot of shops starting to do it. But I wonder if there's data available down the road, or if you have other anecdotal data about different shops that are doing it.
I wasn't necessarily about shops, but in the industry, across the board, about 67%, 2/3 of businesses are doing some kind of program like this, where they just decided that the credit card fees are high, and they don't want to have to have that cut into their profit margins anymore. Especially with certain kinds of industries, like like restaurants. The industry does not have a very high margin. Somebody has to pay for those fees. It can either come out of the owner's pocket or it come from someplace else. I think it was Lou that brought up a good point. He said that his credit card fees are $40,000 a year. How much revenue do you need to generate to net $40,000 in profit? That's a lot of business. For most businesses, it's around 2 to 3 days worth of business they have to do in order to just to pay for their credit card processing fees. I mean, that's a lot of business just for your credit card processing fees. That's money that could be used in the business.
Have we
hiring more employees, buying new equipment?
Have we watched credit card fees be on the climb for a while? Is that what's driving this?
It's not necessarily the credit card processing fees. It's the usage. Like Capital One, they always talk about the rewards card. So obviously everybody wants a Capital One credit card. Everyone wants their miles. I mean, it's so highly promoted. Think about all the actors that they have in these commercials. They're paying them all this money to promote rewards cards, and that's not fair to the merchant.
Okay. That makes sense. I don't know. I'm just thinking about trying to be. I like the idea of fairness, right? And so, what's not reasonable about if you're offering if you're passing along the fee, you're actually applying the cost where the cost is, and being fair to the person that would prefer to pay cash,
right,
or via Zelle, or cashless type option, I guess. Do you talk about that a lot?
The utility company started it. Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, my parents had to actually go down to the electric company and write them a check. And then as technology progressed, now they could be able to pay for their utility bill online, and that's when you saw a convenience fees. And
see, that's where I know that my parents are older than yours. We paid our utility bill in eggs. So okay, so that's kind of where it started. But again, back to, there are certain ways that you are allowed to present this to your customers. There are certain ways that you're not allowed to present it. There are certain ways that you're not supposed to just be quietly bundling it in. If you are actually intentionally adding it as a independent line item, you're not allowed to sneak it in other ways. Now, of course, you can raise your hourly rate, right? You can raise your fees, but you have to be kind of cautious on kind of merging it with. Do we know for sure whether or not it's allowed to be merged with shop supplies fees?
I can't speak on that.
Okay. And maybe that's something that we put a note in and we get back and we add it to the episode notes. I'd be really curious to know whether or not that's actually allowed, or whether there are certain issues in different states that would actually say, no, you're not allowed to do that, right? Because I would imagine that even though there are some federal regulations that apply to all 50 states, aren't there some state regulations that have higher level of restrictions?
The only state regulation I'm aware of is there are 4 states, I think it's Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, and California, that don't allow surcharging. And so obviously in those states, dual pricing is going to be the
alternate,
be allowed, per state law.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Another
But
anecdote, we talked about anecdotes. We just did this whole webinar a few months ago, and 99.3%, whenever a business, so we talked about adoption. I don't want to be the first of the party. I'm going to upset my customers. 99.3% of merchants that do a dual pricing program, their customers will not even notice. They won't even notice that they're doing this program. And so I have a very, very, very successful Italian restaurant here in Las Vegas, and we installed them in the middle of October, and by December they had to run a minimum of 17,000 single credit card transactions. They got a total of 2 complaints. The owner told me 2 complaints, and he said, those 2 people, they complain about everything. I don't need their business. I mean, it's really the way that you present it.
Okay, thank you for not mentioning the name of that restaurant. That wouldn't be fair to them. But
Yeah.
But because those 2 people probably know who they are. And repair shop customers have those challenges too. You have the people that are always going to complain. You have the people that are always going to be looking at every single line item and pushing back. I have shops. I know of shops who, because we even had an episode on this where we talked about the transparency of pricing on invoices. And the one shop on the panel, their invoice says, if they're replacing a water pump, says water pump, $450. That's it. It's done. That's the only thing on the invoice, and it's really, really simple and really, really straight. And he said nobody pushes back. It's and of course you have other shops that are putting down every single detail. 3 ounces of windshield wiper fluid. Right. Yeah, exactly. So I guess where I'm going is back to what you said. It needs to be clearly stated on that paperwork, on the final invoice that they have to pay, or on the screen that they're swiping or paying electronically. And again, they can pay cash electronically. It needs to say 2 different prices. That's the rule. That's how they make sure that they're in compliance.
That is the model that is the most accepted.
There's other options.
Accepted. Yeah, well, I mean, they could do a surcharge, right? They could add a fee, but again, that oops, there it is. Okay, I want to pay with my card, and all of a sudden this fee pops up on the screen.
Right.
Or service charge. Kevin had talked about some type of service charge that the restaurant was charging.
Oh, okay. I do think I recall that. But when it comes to repair shops, almost all of them have a shop supply fee.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was interesting that Mitchell's was at 5% and the other 2 were at 3%. So he wasn't passing his card fees directly. He was bundling it.
Yeah. And is that against the rules? Is that allowed to be done? Can someone?
I don't know how it is in the industry, but I mean, if they state it as a credit card fee, then there's rules that. But he's bundling it all in his shop fee.
His shop supplies fees,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, he could put his utilities in his shop fee, rent into his shop fee.
Right. Okay. So we might have to have somebody on to talk specifically about what's allowed in the shop fees.
Right. So we talked about raising prices, because I've had merchants, give me that rebuttal. Oh, I'm just going to raise all my prices. Well, if you raise your prices, and if you do have customers that do pay with cash, you're also penalizing those customers.
Back to the fairness thing. Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. So again, if you're trying to figure out for your shop what's right for your shop, whether to pass this fee along via surcharge or offer the dual pricing scenarios where you actually just give them 2 numbers right up front and say this is the number for cash grouped payments. One is cash, one is check or Zelle, those types of things, electronic check. And wait a minute. You know what? Before I even close up there, did we talk about this? Chargebacks. How do chargebacks work? If I pay by cash, there's no chargeback.
Nope. or check or Zelle.
So I
You
imagine
can,
that's
you
actually
can
got to be,
collect.
you can do a stop payment on an ACH?
You can't do a stop payment on ACH, but you can dispute an ACH. You have 45 days to dispute an ACH. But on a chargeback, you have up to 6 months to file a chargeback.
Okay. All right. And is the effort to dispute an ACH as difficult as it is or as easy as it is for the consumer?
Kevin brought up a point about the when they bring your vehicle in for repair or something that was unexpected, and it's an expense that you did not budget for, and so. I hate to say, but in the auto repair industry, there are an unscrupulous group of people that will just put it on a credit card just because they don't have the money to pay for it, just to get their car back on the road, and then they'll look for anything on that repair to dispute the transaction, and essentially not have to pay that credit card transaction.
Mm. Okay. All right. So back to addressing those chargeback issues. If you are having a lot of chargebacks, there might be an issue with your communication with your customer base. It might be that you have the wrong type of customer in that situation that are just
Right.
like
We call that
David
friendly
pointed
fire.
out, just unscrupulous. But is it there? There are fewer options, or is it the same number of options, just shorter time frame for them to do a chargeback type effect? I mean, if it's actually green cash, you can't actually charge that back, right?
No,
But
no,
you're saying
it's
that a
done.
Zelle or an ACH can be charged back.
No, a Zelle is a final transaction. It's as if you paid for cash. But an
Okay.
ACH, yes, you can dispute an ACH with your bank. You have 45 days, but you do have to have documentation why you believe that ACH was fraudulent.
So save money on merchant processing and reduce your chargebacks by offering
An alter.
offering alternatives and maybe even promoting. Well, you are promoting because it's a lower cost, right?
Yeah. So one of the downsides
It's
of
amazing.
our industry offering dual pricing is we do notice a lot of merchants, their credit card volume does decrease. Their cash or Zelle or all of their electronic forms of payment does increase just because the consumers are trying to avoid that additional, or they want to save that money.
Yeah. And I
You know,
think we talked about the presentation. It's super important that if you were going to offer even surcharging, but definitely dual pricing, or cash discounting, that you actually, like, before they authorize the charge, like, you put that right up front as early in the process as possible, right? Like, you definitely don't want to surprise people. Because that's actually, as Kevin pointed out, that's kind of the icky part, right? That's kind of the frustration part. If you know up in advance, then you can get around it. All right. So if you're a repair shop owner and you've listened to the episode 37, you're listening to this episode and you're trying to figure out what's right for you, then it kind of makes sense to me that they need to talk to an above board specialist in this area to help them figure out the correct way with the software package that they currently have and the software packages that you offer. What's the best way forward to present it correctly and effectively to their customers? If they're trying to map all that out, they need to be reaching out to someone like yourself. And so if they wanted to ask questions to you directly, how are they going to get in touch?
they can reach out to Rob. I mean, Rob's on my team, and Rob does have he's highly educated in the different programs that we set up merchants with, the different point of sale systems or hardware that we set up our merchants on. And if Rob does run into a situation where he needs additional help, like, he can come to me.
So the easiest way to reach out to me, I'm happy to do a free consult, talk about their needs. But easiest way to reach me is probably, Brad can drop it, in the show notes, but my cell phone number is 610-999-8900. Or you could probably be up on LinkedIn, but since I have a common name, probably look into Brad's connections and you'll find me in there if you look for Rob Davis in there. But that should be the easiest way.
It was great chatting with Rob and then with David. And as they pointed out with each other, they're on the same team. They're working together. And as David pointed out also, that you should just be reaching out to Rob for that initial conversation, that initial consult. And then, Rob reaches out to different members on his team like David based on your situation, based on your need and your numbers. And that's what I was saying before, which is it's not just about the rates. It's often about or as equally about how you're doing it, how you're displaying it. Let's make sure that you are doing things correctly so that you don't get hit with a fine or a fee. So by all means, make sure that you're reaching out to Rob Davis. We're going to put his contact information in the show notes. All right. But he's on LinkedIn. He's on Facebook. And so you're welcome to use my connections and look through my connections and then, reach out to him that way, or look in the show notes, or just reach out directly to me. Just hit a reply and I'll put you in touch. Happy to do it. I'm trying to help as many shops as I can. And if this is something that your shop needs help with, then I'm happy to make the connection. And so that's what the Garage Grit is all about, helping shops, as many as possible. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode. I'm looking forward to you listening to the next episode. And in the meantime, if you're looking to figure out what your next steps are for growth, then I'm happy to suggest aashopmarketing.com and go out to that page, fill out the form. We'll reach back out to you and give you your next marketing step. Also, similar to Rob and David, that initial consult, there's no fee for something like that. We're just trying to help. Thank you. See you next time.